Live going on. And we are live. And literally as we went live, we lost Shah, my co-host. Well, what's going down, everybody? My name is
I'm right here.
No, we don't. Okay, now we see you. Something happened. You cut out.
Yeah, I just turned off the camera to allow you all the time to speak because I believe that you need a voice.
Well, and look at you now interrupting my intro. So that whole thing went out the window fast. Check this out. Welcome to the new standard. The interactive new music industry web show, and we are an interactive show, and so that means you can ask questions using the Q&A button at any point during the broadcast. And for the past 2 episodes, because this is only our 3rd episode, myself and my co-host Shah, aka Mr. Get Your Buzz Up, have been getting flooded with technical questions regarding recording, mixing, and mastering, engineering overall, and we keep saying we're going to have an engineer live on the show with us to answer those questions and address some DIY recording issues for all of you because that's what you want. And couldn't pull it together last week or last episode last month. But today we're fortunate enough to have Joey V of RemedyBornMusic.com live with us right here on the new standard. Joey, what's going down?
What's going on, Payne? How you doing? Chilling?
I'm good now that we're actually broadcasting. We were having some technical problems earlier. So before we continue and before we open the show up for questions from everybody who's tuned in, give us an idea, Joey, of some of the tracks you've mixed and mastered and just the experience level that you have as an engineer.
I can say now, after doing it for 10 years, the experience I've gained has been incredible, of course. Some of the biggest tracks I've mixed have been through you. Thank you.
You didn't have to say that.
Some of the best ones. I'm starting to realize people, as an engineer, it's an art. You know, people pay you for your ear. I'm starting to realize, you know, sometimes very few, but there's maybe been 2 people in the time that I've done music with that they liked the sound that I was going for, but they felt there was just didn't fit their needs, and I sent them to another engineer, and it was just better for them, you know. So I've learned that not to take it personal, I guess, if somebody isn't gonna feel your sound, you know, for engineer work.
Give us some of some song titles of some of the tracks that you either consider your best or your most well known.
The one I did with you with the 2 Chainz, Big Money Talk, Yo Gotti, and Lil Chucky. That was nice track to do. I had fun doing that. Also, God, you got me on the spot. Tons of them.
Yeah, you're the man today. You're going to be on the spot for another 38 minutes or so.
Yeah. Let me just bust out the CD here. There's other ones. Yeah, the one we did with you know, Money B of Digital Underground. That was awesome. That was honoring. That was with Tech Smith & Wesson, which, you know, I grew up loving that stuff. That was the best shit ever listening to growing up. I got to do some stuff with Ray J on a joint for Rebstar, that guy in Sweden. He sent me his clientele, of course. And I'm just have a few other projects underway, and just a lot of local stuff too. Underground, as in like, you know, underground people from Atlanta. You know, there's tons of different types of music too. So.
That's what's up. That's what's up. Well, thank you. We appreciate you joining us. And trust and believe you will get flooded with questions from our various viewers shortly. But before we get into that, just to start things off, I want to ask you a pretty important question that I get a lot. People are really concerned with gear. And you know, nowadays, a lot of people, because this is the age of do-it-yourself, but as far as music is concerned, and our show focuses on practical advice for DIY musicians. And a lot of artists are recording themselves nowadays in home studios. So to start things off, if you were, right now, with your experience level and your knowledge base, if you were building a home studio for a new artist, what would your setup include?
Definitely, you know, you want to get a nice condenser microphone. you want to at least, if you're going to spend money on a nice vocal microphone, you want to at least be spending $300. Some people might find that really expensive, but for the money that you're spending, you get what you pay for. I myself, if you have a little bit more money, try to go up to a $700 to $1,000 condenser microphone. It will be definitely worth for your nice vocals if you're serious and going to be doing it for, like 10 years or something like that. Um, Definitely, the basic Pro Tools I would go with. I know Acid now has gotten really good with the waveforms and on the digital technology, so I definitely would just make sure you have good, I guess, digital audio converters, good preamps, good isolation with your microphone booth, and good studio monitors too. You want to get good studio monitors. You can get them pretty inexpensive nowadays. They're not as much as they used to be like 10 years ago. You can get a nice pair starting out for about $200 each. Um, the list goes on. I mean, you can go up in price. Believe me, I sit and look at the Full Compass catalogs and Sweetwater catalogs and dream, but it's all about doing with what you got.
What are some mics that you would recommend just right off the bat that you've used and had experience with?
I like AKG. A lot of people have used those. I use one in my studio. I like the Rode mics. They're really good for um, vocals again. Um, some of the vintage ones that take like a half an hour to heat up are really nice, but those, of course, are really expensive, but they're nice because they give that warmth. Standard tube mics for microphone recording or for vocal recording is good too. Good tube microphones. I mean, the list. I mean, I can keep on going through brands, but it's just more. I guess having more than one is good. Different types of styles of sounds for vocal recording. Any other question?
Yes. I was just making sure Payne wanted to make sure Payne wasn't going to say anything more. Yes.
I'll get better at answering them too. I promise, guys.
It's all good. It's all good. You're doing fine. So, you hear a lot of mixes. What are the biggest mixing mistakes you hear upcoming artists make when they record and they mix their own projects?
Distortion. I mean, it's like I don't get how people don't hear distortion in their music. It drives me insane. And I don't want to sound like a stickler or an ass, but I don't feel like you're really listening to your music if you listen to it distorted. You want to turn all your music down that you're listening to in your car. Everything that you love, you want to turn it down to where your speakers aren't rattling to where you hear something wrong going on. You want to make sure you're listening to your music first. When you start doing that, I guess, is when you start noticing how your music should sound. I guess that would be my number one thing. Yeah, just start at a recordable level. I mean, you don't have to have instrumentals super loud to record to. I prefer getting recordable instrumentals, not mastered instrumentals, because overall, you're going to be mastering the song with the vocals on it anyways. So it makes sense not to have your instrumental mastered when it is going out to be recorded on. If that makes sense.
Elaborate on that too, because we have a lot of producers tuning in, and what I hear personally is a lot of producers tend to throw crazy mastering filters over their beats and really crush the dynamics. So just if there's a way to put that in layman's terms,
don't do it. I mean, unless you don't want people to record on the music, and maybe that's why producers do it, because a lot of producers throw their beats online and they crunch them to death because they hope that the person notices not to record to that beat and contacts them for the original recordable, clean, mixed beat. Maybe some producers do it and they're just not realizing they're doing it. You don't need to. Just pull off your compressors. Trust your ear is so important. trusting your ear. I mean, you can look at you can look on your screen and see something is hitting red, but it might not be even distorting at all. If you've ever noticed in certain programs, you got to make sure that you can trust your program too. You know, don't always read I guess
The meters.
the dials, yeah, the meters and all that stuff. Trust your ears, seriously, and make sure you listen to it around too, in different speakers, stereos in your car. I sometimes go to Best Buy, and I'll just go through all the stereo systems when I need to listen to like a serious CD, like some of these projects we've been doing with you and Brent. I've been doing that with just to make sure, you know, because it's something important to me.
Wait, so you take the records that you've mixed to Best Buy and just listen on their floor models?
Sometimes, yeah, I'll like, you know, I won't listen to them super loud, but just to see certain bass frequencies. I don't want to overkill the bass. Sometimes I feel like I mix too bassy, and sometimes if I feel like the song, if I'm struggling, if the bass and the low end, you know, is clashing sometimes I can't hear it on my speakers here or in my headphones. I have to make sure I get maybe a 12-inch or even a 15 to make sure I'm not getting that wobble. Sometimes you get that wobble if you get if you get low end frequency bass mixed with the low end, I guess, bass guitar. If you ever notice the clash and that weird wobble it creates.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I've tried to get rid of that shit, and you know, a lot of it's just making sure you're EQing them and you have them separated, of course. So.
Well, hey, on that note, we have a couple questions in, but I think there's one that's been highly rated by everybody that's watching, and it's relevant to this particular point of the discussion. Andrew Qualls wants to know from you what the difference between mixing and mastering is. I think that's a good question to answer before we go any further.
Huge, yeah. A lot of people send me stuff, and the first question I ask is, are you needing it mixed and mastered, or do you need it just mastered? A lot of people wrap up mastered in both. Mixing is basically where you're getting all your tracks separated, basically separation. Usually people send me all their tracks. If it isn't already mixed well from the get-go, I usually get their tracks sent to me. Are you guys still there? Hello?
Yeah, we're here.
Okay, cool. Sorry, I heard it cut out for a minute. I was worried I was going to talk forever or some shit. Yeah, so, I mean, yeah, mixing, basically you're getting all the tracks separated and you're going through and individually mixing them. You know, you get the kick drum, the snares, the hi-hats. You have an option to throw compressors, EQs, individual reverbs on each track. Usually when I mix, I have that separation on all the tracks. I can EQ and compress individual tracks. I usually bus my reverb to all of them, so it's like in the same room. I don't usually waste all the processing power and putting each reverb on the track. That's getting maybe too deep. Mastering is after it's been mixed. You want to make sure it's mixed properly, and then you bring that full mix up to a punchy, more radio play volume to where it's more universal across the board sound, I guess, fullness. It's like, I guess it's a sort of compression, but it's more of like a multi-band. Yeah.
So what would you say the fundamental difference between the two processes is?
Mixing is a lot more in depth, by far. It's totally separate from mastering. And I guess in my terms, some people might call mixing mastering. I don't necessarily think that's the proper lingo myself. Mastering is just after the full song is mixed, bringing it up and making sure, I guess, your whole album is in the same level, volume, and all your songs. And if it's just one song, just making sure it's loud enough to where it's not distorted, but it's brought up to the loudest it can get before distortion would be mastering.
Okay, next question. This is from Block. Shout out to Block. He wants to know, what do you think are the pros and cons of recording and mixing in your own home studio, and when should you consider recording in a professional establishment?
Nowadays, you really don't have to go to a professional establishment, and I mean, unless you're really, really trying to, pay the big bucks to do it. Yeah, I mean, I guess. But I guess the advantages, I guess, first question was, what's the advantages of mixing and doing all your stuff at home? Comfort, freedom of, time, not having the time constraint of a hourly studio rate that's huge. And, of course, if you're recording at Sony Studios, you're on a crazy time crunch. Um, so you have to have all your creative process for that song, everything taken care of beforehand before you go lay it down. I'm in a home studio, you can take more time doing that. I notice when people come in to record with me, it's usually a one-on-one process, and a lot of people feel really comfortable to be themselves. And I even have my microphone booth sort of separated so they can even feel like they're alone in there. And that helps a lot. I've noticed tons that you're not watching them necessarily. And I mean, it's the same with me. I don't want people watching me eat. I guess it would be the same. People not want to watch you rap, I guess, or something sometimes. Some people want to be watched.
Another question. I, I might have to preface this question, and I guess I will. So, the question is from Muhammad, and he wants to know if there's any difference between DAWs when it comes to mixing and mastering. And before you answer that question, I just want to ask which DAWs do you have experience with, and then you can answer his question just so that we have some context.
The digital audio workstation. Obviously the digital domain coming into the music industry, it's been a huge change. A lot of people argued the warmth from a 24-inch tape that back in the day. I think even Tool still records to a tape first before they put it into Pro Tools and whatnot, because they like that natural compression that tape has. So I guess what was the question again? The difference between, or what I
Yeah,
thought
I guess.
what I worked with? I guess what I've worked with. I've been on some Sony DAWs, Pro Tools, Pro Tools TDM, and the HD system when I was at MMI. I still use the LE version. I incorporated tons of plugins over time. So when I came out of school, I just invested in the most expensive gear so I could have it about this long. I need to upgrade soon. But the reason why I got the top-notch Mac, the way I got the Pro Tools, why I got all the nice plugins, because I knew I was going to have this system for a good 7 to 10 years. And out of it, I've gotten my money's worth for sure. That's another good reason why you can invest in a good home studio and really progress if you know what you're doing. You don't have to have much nowadays because of DAWs to make a final product, of course. I mean, Chain One, you're a perfect example of that. So, I mean, you make it happen more than all of us with those beats coming out of that motherfucker.
Yeah, and my DAW sucks. I would not recommend using Sony Acid Pro. Period.
Well, I could see why you would do it especially in the beat format. I could not see making a beat in Pro Tools. That's the thing. Like, you have to start in Acid. For me, I have to start it in Acid, and then I have to finish it in Pro Tools for the final mixing and mastering, because it's just the whole setup. The guys behind Digidesign really thought that shit out, and it's amazing, like how it works, and it almost thinks ahead for you in a way.
Okay, yeah, there's a good answer to the question. So number one, it really depends on what your workflow is.
Yeah.
Because when you use Pro Tools, you have the mix window, it's separate. You have, and I'll tell you right now, the difference between Pro Tools and Acid is that I don't think Acid even has auxiliary sends. I don't think that's even an option. So if you're a professional engineer, you're going to want the options that something like Pro Tools or Logic has to offer. I don't use Logic or Pro Tools. I don't know if you could tell us the difference between the two. I know it's from talking to different engineers, it seems like it's just a personal preference. That some like how one is set up and some just like the other, probably just because that's what they're experienced with.
Really, I mean, it's all about what format you're comfortable with. As long as you get a quality sound coming out of it. I see why Pro Tools is industry standard, why It's across the board. It's not because they invested money into it necessarily. They invest a lot of time. I mean, the guys behind it, I mean, are amazing. Just some of the plugins that go along with it. I mean, I'm sure you can get the same plugins for Acid. I'm sure you can get the Renaissance EQs, the Renaissance Wave, the Renaissance reverb and whatnot. But I think it's just the way it processes the sound. I guess they put a lot of time into that, the digital audio, the A to D converters versus the D to A converters. I think they used a lot of Focusrite preamps too. That helped a lot. Focusrite was a good company for their outboard preamps before they invested in all the digital technology that went into Pro Tools. I'm sure Avid now, after they bought out, I think it was DigiDesign first, then Avid took over Pro Tools and they made it a lot better. Where they went back to the PCI card slot versus the M box because of latency issues. But I can keep on going into that.
Well, hey, here's a good segue. Now we have a whole bunch of questions. You started talking about specific plugins. Now we have a whole bunch of plugin-specific questions. The first one, I'm just asking this one because it's been up there forever.
Yeah.
Is what is your go-to EQ and compressor? I know you mentioned the Renaissance bundle.
Those right there. I started working with those in MMI. I had my instructor show me. And take in the fact that I went to school, but I was there after hours and on weekends, bothering my instructors. They would almost have to kick me out of classes. I would sort of wait for somebody not to show up, and then I would sneak in and use that computer and learn how to use it because I was amazed by the plugin. So I had a lot of work with them. So I find out the Renaissance compressors, EQs, that whole bundle is fucking awesome. Great reverbs. I mean, the guys behind it, it sounds like it's really in that same room. And also how you bus your reverb and how you reverb. You want to make sure you use the same type of setting reverb for your whole song. If you're going to be having this song with all these violins that sound like they're in a cathedral, then you might want to make sure that the verses that you're recording to that song have that same type of reverb setting. And if you're able to get it all in a mix, that makes your mix so much more consistent, if that makes sense. Hold on, really quick. I got to turn off my oven quick. I'll be right back. Sorry, guys. Hold on. I hear it beeping.
Oh, but that's what that was. I thought you were sitting on an IED or something. Hey, Shah.
What is up?
Maybe you went to school for this too. You want to answer some questions?
I don't see. I do see one question that I can answer.
Well, okay, select it, or do I? Am I the only one?
You gotta select it. It's Spencer's question. So I can answer some of that, and then Joey can answer the rest. Do you use outboard gear when mixing instead of using just our plugins? The one thing I learned at school is that if you can use both, then do both. Obviously, using plugins tends to be cheaper in the long run, and it's just easier to get. But the more outboard gear you can get, the better the sound is going to be. Period. On most things, because you just can't. A plugin can't always simulate that sound, and it's always going to be better. I know we all know an engineer who's stocking up on outboard gear now, and he's just doing all that to mix everything. So
mostly what he's stocking up.
I agree. Outboard gear is very good. That's what plugins mimic. But now plugins have gotten very, very. I mean, they're getting to the point where they're taking over. That outboard gear is becoming digital outboard gear, and a lot of it analog is what you're talking about. That analog warmth, that sound, that punchiness, those outboard compressors. Hell yeah, you definitely. If you're going to be mixing your music digital format, if you can master it at least in the outboard gear when it comes to overall mastering a song, I suggest do that for sure when you come to mastering. That just comes in money. More money, obviously, the more outboard gear and digital gear you're going to get.
Honestly, I think,
you
I think that's how Jay-Z gets it all done. The mixing engineer mixes it, but when it gets mastered, it's all outboard gear that masters everything. I remember seeing that.
Yeah, I bet you Jay-Z probably uses tape to record to, and then he probably runs it into Pro Tools, and then back into some analog mastering gear, and you can do that with signal paths and all that. I mean, if you ever go to a studio, you have the option to go back and forth and back and forth, and as long as you know your signal path is and where it flows, you can capture all that and make it one. I mean, that's one thing about like Timberland and some of the best. Their whole signal path, their whole studio flows so well. It's like they're just constantly in creative process, and all sort of goes into one DAW, whether they're using audio, or digital gear, or analog and whatnot. It's really a preference, though. Really, it truly is.
Back on plugins, we have a question from Donnell. He wants to know what compressor you're using for mastering. Without giving away all your secrets, what are some plugins you're using for the mastering process?
It really, I mean, it depends on what type of music it is. Some of the basic compression is the L2 limiter. That one helps a lot. That was the most recommended, and the reason why it is because it's built for that. Also, the C2 multi-band compressor, if you know how to use it properly. Sometimes if you plug it in, you can overkill your mix. You can basically ruin the mix that you went for just by putting that through the plug-in. Totally go backwards, but more of the L2. A slight touch of reverb at the very final process sometimes helps.
Sorry, what did you say about the L2? I think your Wi-Fi glitched out a little.
My bad. The L2 Ultra Maximizer, I think it is. Maybe it's L3 now. I know they've changed.
They do have an L3, yeah. I think the L3 is a multi-band limiter or something, and
Right,
the L2.
so that helps a lot too. I mean, I use L2 a lot. But yeah, if you can outboard it too, do that.
There we go. Let's keep these questions going because they're coming in and we got to knock them out. Some of them I don't understand. How about this one? Maybe you'll know what they're talking about. Daniel Yu says, when I A/B my mixes on different mediums, certain elements don't shine the way I would like. Would you go by ear even if it doesn't look right in the DAW?
Yeah, and make sure before you listen to it around first. Like, make sure it's not. If you find it distorting on some systems and not others, then there's probably something still wrong with it somehow. Yes. Go by ear.
So generally, it's if it sounds bad in one system, there's a problem.
Most likely, I mean, not necessarily. I mean, make sure all your systems are consistent with your knobs too. I mean, somebody might have their bass just jacked up on their stereo at home, and you go listen to your music there, and you're like, oh fuck, it's too bassy. That's just because they have the bass too hard or too high. So make sure everything's set at 0 for monitoring reasons. If you're gonna go listen to it around, I should have pointed that out earlier. Yeah, I mean, just trust your ear, like they say. I mean, I was told in school. And I learned now, all this is really overthinking. You come back to it, if you have your basic EQs, compression, multi-tracks, I mean, if you think about it, Curtis Mayfield would shit his pants if he knew the technology that we have right now to work with today. Even the simple ACID programs, he'd be like, holy shit, how do you have all these tracks, Pardon my French, but it's true. So I guess work with what you got, trust your ear. I was always told there's no rules, only guidelines. So keep that in mind when you are doing mixing and music, period.
So here's a question about guidelines, and I'm going to change the question a little, but DC from SCP asks, is there a recommended EQ frequency chart out there for hip-hop beats? And I guess another question to preface that question is, do you use frequency charts, or have you ever found those helpful?
I remember they did give them to us. That's funny that you say that. I was just thinking that too, like 2 days ago. Like, I remember those. They had for like instruments, like the violin, what you should use. I guess that did help a little bit, but it never stuck with me because once again, every mix is like a Rubik's Cube. Once you get everything sent to you, every mix is going to always change. Every violin's not going to have the same frequency, so having a basic frequency chart for a violin, I guess, is almost like, set too harsh. Like, it depends how that violin was EQ'd from the keyboard in the first place. Usually keyboard samples have gotten so good now, they come so well compressed, some of the kicks I don't even fuck with. messed with. Sorry, messed with.
You can
Or
swear all you want.
all right, good. I was like, damn, our kids.
Don't listen to Shy. He said
Okay.
all you want. You can.
Go all in.
Just for
All
expression,
in.
people. I promise, just for expression, like hip hop days. No, but yeah. So I mean, some of the keyboards have some, well compressed kick drums. So why over compress it if it's already been sent in that keyboard for that reason to make it sound that good? Not always, but some. I guess coming back to frequency charts, yeah, every song is going to change in frequency, and you have to bring all those frequencies together and basically pick it apart. So you go. That's why separation is good when you're mixing. You want the most separation when you are mixing. And I guess your threat is low mid range. That usually collects the most in mixes. The more tracks you get, especially vocal tracks, you're going to get a lot of low mids, and you want to just start taking those out as you double up, or just keep an eye on that, because that's where you get the muddy in mixes. In my experience of mixing, I should say.
All right, next question. Spencer wants to know if it's a good idea to get a summings box. What is a summings box?
I don't know what that is, actually.
All right, we're moving on then. So next one is from let's see. Akhenaten wants to know, have any of us? So this even goes for me. I don't mess with engineering. Have any of you engineered in live performance? If so, put that information. Okay, I guess what he's asking is if any of us have experience with live sound, and if that experience with live sound applies to studio engineering. And both of you, I don't do this, but unless I absolutely have to, and then it sounds horrible. But both you, Joey, and Shah, both have experience with live sound. Shah's like the man. Shah, his old nickname before he was Mr. Get Your Buzz Up was Live Sound God.
Nice.
You know what I'm saying? So yeah, he was. What he can do on a 4-channel mixer. You got all these engineers right now running around with this Bluetooth technology where the iPad, their syncs in the Mackie, the 64-channel boards with digital effects and all that. Man, Shah could do that all on a 4-channel mixer back in '98.
Oh man,
this is a good question for you, sir. But if you don't feel like you want to take all the shine, you can pass it off to Joey.
Well, Shah, you've done live sound. Go ahead, because that's hard to do.
Have any of you engineered in live performance and so with the recording and mixing? He was joking about all that, but
oh well, shit now.
But the one thing I do know, because I have talked to plenty of engineers who work on live sound and that happen to also be engineers and mix things, is that they always say some of it applies. I guess the one thing I would ask is, have you engineered in live performance? If so, put that information in your. So like, are they talking about? I guess the best way I'm looking at the question is, are they talking about mixing right there live?
I think they're talking about mixing to the room. Like when I did live sound for MMI, which was very small, like parts, I learned that mixing to the room is the most important, and the shape of the room and all that shit. And really, that's what I learned. It's hard though, and it's a challenge. And I have a lot of respect for live sound guys that can pull off a good mix in a bad sounding room, or just in any room. It's hard. It's a challenge always. Live sound way harder. It's a lot harder to control. When the bodies fill a room, it changes the whole sound versus an empty room. So you got to always keep in mind when the room changes. I guess the more people, the better it sounds, though they say. So that would be
because it's going to drown out the sound.
Yep.
There's not as many echoes, and that's what I was going to say. Some of it does cross over. But live sound is so different because it's the constant adjusting to how somebody is going to be on a microphone or how they're holding the microphone. And we all know that people get on stage, they don't always hold the mic right. Sometimes you get a mic and it sounds just like we're talking, and sometimes it's and so that becomes a pain in the ass, where someone's record when someone's doing a mix. Someone was in the studio. More than likely, they weren't kissing the mic and making out with the mic when they're in the studio. So.
Right. Agreed. I guess it is. It does have a lot to do with the person performing, also.
Yeah, buddy.
How many people are on stage?
Payne, you're
Oh
muted.
yeah, I'm muted. Here we go. Next
Muted.
question. I got it. I'm good. Next question. We got a lot of questions coming in, so we're gonna try to knock these out. This one's for me specifically from Andrew Qualls, but it definitely is a question that I want to throw back over to Joey because he's also a producer. He's not just a engineer. How or where did you learn to mix and master your beats? Yeah, I have no idea.
You're asking me?
No, I'm answering the question for myself. How or where did I learn to mix and master my beats? I have no idea. I mean, I did. The thing about it is, I didn't. I still think my mixes suck. But the weird thing is, I guess I don't know. They've been used by a lot of my 2-track mixes have been used by a lot of major artists from 50 Cent to Meek Mill. So I don't know. I don't know where I learned. I think I was just A-Bing a lot, and not just A-Bing on systems, but I was A-Bing with professional recordings. You know, I would make my beat, and then I would listen to an instrumental version of an industry track that was mixed and mastered in a big studio with somebody that knew what they were doing. And I didn't have any technical knowledge. I didn't use a frequency chart. I didn't have a spectrum analyzer, nothing like that. I just trained my ear to work with the gear that I had. And you know, to answer another question that came up, just because this is a part of it, someone asked, Kurt asked if we mix using only monitors or we use a combination of headphones and monitors, and I personally start my mixes always with headphones. And I don't know if I'm giving good advice because I'm not an engineer, but when I mix, I generally mix the percussion first, and on headphones, and then start incorporating the melodic elements in headphones, and then transition over to my monitors. But I have really small monitors too, as you can see in the background. I guess we all do, but for me, it was just years and years and years of trying and A-Bing and A-Bing and A-Bing and listening, training my ear, and you know, unfortunately, Joey wasn't hanging out by me telling me what to do, so it was a long, long process, and it's still something I struggle with. But Joey, as a producer and an engineer, you're mixing a lot of instrumentals yourself. So, what advice can you give as far as just production goes for those of us out there that aren't recording vocals?
Well, first I wanted to point out what you were saying about your music mixes, your beat mixes. Over the last, I think I've worked with you, what, since 2005, maybe? I think maybe around then.
It's been a long time.
And I just say, like, your new stuff when you're sending for that Soul project were amazing. Your mixes are getting great. And I suggest, you know, people buy music from this guy. And the thing is, I like about you is that you're open to say, hey, if something doesn't sound right, let me know, I can change it. Some producers don't do that. So, like I said, man, like, there was like maybe 1 or 2 things I asked of like all those songs. Sounded fucking great, man. Awesome job, dude. Like inspiring, goosebumps type shit. I mean, good music, good work. Coming back to production, I guess, yeah, starting with the most cleanest sound from the get-go, and that's, I think that's where Payne got. I mean, I could hear it from the beginning tracks when we did like old school Ox and Jesse's. I mean, from now all the way up, it all have definitely changed in sound. I think that really just starts with making sure your original sound fat and clean and proper volume, not distorted, but loud enough to where your overall mix is loud enough in volume to start with and heard. I guess separation too, once again. I like the fact that when I do my production, I do a mixing as I'm going, you know, sort of like when I do recording of people's albums, I mix as they're going so they can hear somewhat how they're sounding or gonna sound so they can continue to build their music. So That's a good advantage of being able to produce my music and then turn and mix it also and switch it into another program. And it's fun because it's like starting in Acid, and then I'm like, all right, cool, bounce them all down. Now I can go into Pro Tools, and it's a whole other system, a whole other program. Somewhat it takes time, or it takes from the time takes from the inspiration, but overall, it's sort of inspiring to be able to change it to another program, so it helps you stay interested in it, I guess, in the process.
So, I got a question for you, Joey. That's not on our list, and it's not so much a tech question, but I think it applies really nicely. Say someone isn't gonna mix their own music, or they don't want to get into mixing at all, but they want to hire someone to mix their music. How do you choose the right engineer? What should they look for? What questions should they be asking? Those type of things.
They should look for a person who's very open-minded to what they want done, but they also should look for um, just quality. Make sure you listen to their music. Um, Make sure you listen to their products. Make sure they have a website. I mean, you can send your music, especially if you're sending stuff that you love, especially if you're going to be wanting to play it back for the rest of your life. Be choosy. Spend a little bit more money because you get what you pay for. Not, tons, of course. You don't have to spend tons to get good sound, but you want to spend some money. You don't want to just off of. Um, Also, you should maybe look for them to do the first mix for nothing so they can showcase their skills unless they're pretty established already. Um, that's another way of going shopping around.
That
Well,
sounds to me like an advertisement. So before we go further, Joey, do you offer that option?
Yeah, I do actually to a lot of people, more local artists, but I mean if they're like shopping around, and I see that they're a good artist and they're serious, yeah, definitely.
So how would an artist who's interested, or even a producer for that matter, who's interested in getting his or her tracks, beats, whatever, professionally mixed and mastered through you, how would they go about making that happen?
You just can contact me, check out my website at remedybornmusic.com, music spelled Muzik. Usually all the information's right there, or not usually, it always is right there. You can contact me at the Gmail address I supply on the website. And really, we just go from there. I mean, see what you need, see what services you need. I listen to your product. I'll be honest. Sometimes I've been like, yo, man, your shit sounds good. I don't want to mess with it. You should do this, this, and this to it. Send it back and tell me what you think. And then if they're adamant, yeah, I'm going to take their money and mix it. But I don't, sometimes being honest is the best customer service because then you'll get their return clientele from somebody else, or they just want to mix. They want you to master it versus, as I told them, it sounded good mixing it, or it sounded good mixed, whatever. You get my gist.
All right, I guess we have time for one last question. I think this is a question that's going to apply to a lot of DIY artists that are mixing records at home. And the question is from Alexander. He says, what is the best way to mix vocals to a two-track instrumental? Now, that's a hell of a question. Obviously, you don't want to give away your secrets and you don't want to get too in-depth. But what are some suggestions when tackling this pretty common scenario?
Um, if it's a already well mixed two-track instrumental, it's not distorted. It's actually a lot easier because you have less tracks to mix individually besides the vocals. If you notice the beat is a little too loud, turn it down, record the vocals into it, mix it, and then when you bring it up for overall mastering, you can just bring up the overall song. Don't feel afraid to turn down that beat a little bit if you need to. It's not going to mess with anything. Again, trust your ears. Um, it's just like recording a song without, it's everything but doing it with all the tracks. It's easier. If he's asking, like, I guess, how, as in recording it with a microphone and all that, then that's something else. Hold
I
on.
guess his question was just mixing, so I think you answered it. And we're out
Okay,
of
yeah.
time.
That's not it.
What? Well, we're out
No,
of time. We're out of time. We're out of time. What happened?
no. We just got lots of questions. We're gonna have to bring Joey back.
Yeah, can we do that?
Oh, I say when next Tuesday or Tuesday next month, right?
Something like that. We'll work it out.
Hell yeah, definitely. As long as it's like if it's every 4 weeks, I can take off work or switch my schedule around every two.
See, he didn't
Tuesday.
he didn't just say yes or no. He gave you a glimpse into his life. We appreciate you, Joey. Check out Remedy Born Music, muzik.com. Follow him on Twitter at Remedy Born Music, muzik. My name is DJ Payne One. Shout out to my co-host Shy, aka Mr. Get Your Buzz Up from
Follow me at Mr.
GetYourBuzzUp.com.
Get Your Buzz Up.
And I'll
And
be here next time.
yeah, and we'd really like to thank Joey V from Remedy More Music again for being a guest today and answering all of your questions that we couldn't answer if you weren't here, but you were going to ask us anyway, make us feel like fools. So stay tuned. We will be back next month right here on the new standard, the DIY New Music Industry Mix Show. Thank you for tuning in. A recorded version of this broadcast will be available on our YouTube page. Appreciate it. Tune in with us again. Follow us on social media, and we'll keep you updated on when the next broadcast will be. Peace.
Yes.
Peace.